All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, dear Lord. You do know that you have a strength and conditioning coach up on stage, and you know what happens when you don't respond appropriately to us. So, good morning, everyone. Good morning. There we go. All right, it is my distinct honor to introduce our next and final keynote speaker of Norwich University's Inaugural Leadership Conference, Miss Jillian Ward. A native of Queens, New York, Jillian's been a competitive athlete for more than 40 years. During that time, she has earned professional status in 4 different athletic disciplines: Super League, Strongman, Powerlifting, and Bodybuilding. Additionally, she has held 7 world records and placed 3rd in the 2008 CrossFit Games after joining the sport just 3 months prior. However, she has made a real mark in the industry as a gym owner, strength and conditioning coach, nutrition coach, fitness podcaster, and publisher of several health-related articles and ebooks. Through her expert and individualized coaching, she has helped hundreds of ordinary people achieve extraordinary results. I am lucky enough to be one of those people. Now, many people have described her as the nicest person in the world, and I can tell you that she is, right up until the point where someone blows a whistle or starts a stopwatch. Because when that happens, that's when the real magic begins to occur. So if you would allow me. 3, 2, 1, go. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our next speaker, my coach, my wife, and my best friend, Miss Jillian Ward.
Thank you. Nothing like a little bit of pressure. So I am extremely nervous. You might see me shaking. When I get nervous, I say really silly things, and I get very clumsy. Hard to believe that I'm a professional athlete, but I fall down a lot. Some of you witnessed me fall at the Marine Corps Ball on my entrance last year. So I'm going to try to stay on my feet. We're not going to have any first aid today. So I was first asked to speak here 3 months ago, January 10th to be exact. And the reason I remember that is I've kept him up every night since talking about it. So when I got the invitation to be here, I was at the Toyota dealership in Berlin, and I was there for what I thought was going to be a routine oil change on my car. Come to find out that mice had gotten in under the hood and eaten a bunch of wires, and I know that Vermonters can relate to that. So not only was I going to sit in the waiting room a whole lot longer than I planned, but it was going to be an expensive job. And that was kind of the state that I was in. Additionally, I was fielding calls from a friend in crisis. So I sat down at the only seat still available in the waiting area, and I opened up my laptop. And I received the invitation from Megan Liptak, inviting me to speak at the first Inaugural Leadership Conference. And I had to read it a couple times. Did this go to the wrong person? So I was incredibly flattered, and I knew that it was something that I was going to want to do, but I was terrified, completely out of my domain. But more than anything else, I was confused by the invitation. I did not know why I was being asked to speak at a leadership conference. Fitness conference, sure, but leadership. What do I know about leadership? See, I never set out to be a leader, or this word that's used, change maker. Today, I'm going to share with you some stories about my life, about a little girl with big hair, an even bigger ego, with a burning passion for the things she loved most, and she refused to take no for an answer. Next slide. From as early as I can remember, I dreamed of flying, not of being a pilot, of flying, me flying. I thought that if I got strong enough and fast enough, that I would achieve flight. And I saw the world around me as my playground, my training grounds. Anybody that follows me on Instagram knows that I still see it that way today. There was not an object that I did not try to jump onto, jump off of, vault over, hurdle over, swing from, hang from, both outdoors and in my house. Let's just say I broke a lot of furniture. Nothing was trustworthy to sit on in my home. And on one such day, at about the age of 2, and I'm not sure if this is more of a story I've been told or a memory, I attempted to fly down the main staircase of my childhood home in Queens. And I started at the top, and I crash landed at the bottom. And my grandmother found me at the bottom of the stairs, heard me fall. Luckily, I did not get injured. And she brought me up to my mom and said, "You need to do something with this child. You should put her in gymnastics." And that's exactly what my parents did. See, there were very few opportunities for young girls in sports in the late 70s, and gymnastics was one of them. The summer before I was born, Nadia Comaneci was the first person to score a perfect 10 in the Olympic Games, and gymnastics was growing. And both my mother and grandmother watched those Olympics, and I was probably going to be a gymnast whether I liked it or not. So my parents enrolled me in a gymnastics program at the Flushing YMCA. So that's a picture kind of early on. I'm the one with the dark hair in my face over there. So I told you about my grandmother finding me at the bottom of this staircase. Well, that's a picture of her over here. That's Grandma Shirley. Yes, she is camping. That is a tent that you see behind her. That's how she dressed to go camping. Now imagine how she dressed doing her favorite thing, which is going out dancing to the Copacabana. And there's a word that I put up there. If you're not familiar with the word moxie, it's kind of a slang word, believed to be Yiddish in origin, and it represents somebody that's fearless and courageous, full of pizzazz, and that is how I saw my grandmother. My grandmother was this unbelievable paradox of feminine glamour on one side and incredible strength, both physically and of character, on the other. She was incredibly independent. She was a single mother in the post-World War II era, raising my father and his siblings. She financially supported the family. She did all the work around the house, and she was an athlete in the 1920s and 1930s. My first memory of my grandmother, so we lived in a home together, and my grandmother didn't live with us, we lived with her. Her home, her rules. And she was gardening in our backyard, which she kept the vegetable garden. And I remember her tending to the cucumbers, and she was wearing something called hot pants, which we've later come to call Daisy Dukes, but they're really, really short shorts, and platform shoes, these big, high platform shoes. Turns out my grandmother, I'm going to aside that wasn't supposed to be part of this, bid on Imelda Marcos's shoe collection. She was the same size in an auction, and she was wearing a pair of Imelda Marcos's shoes. And I remember watching the muscles in her legs and thinking to myself, that's amazing. I want to be just like that. My grandmother represents this perfect human. But I didn't just admire her from afar. My grandmother spent lots of time working with me and teaching me. She taught me to have ownership and responsibility for the words that came out of my mouth, my actions, and my behaviors. She taught me to speak confidently, to enunciate my words, not to talk about something or say something if I didn't know anything about it. We spent lots of lessons on posture, and she said, if you want to be successful, you need to behave like somebody that is successful. Behave like somebody is always watching you. But the most important lesson that she taught me was that you do not just deserve things in this life. If you want something, you must earn it. You're going to see one more picture on the first slide. That is my favorite superhero. That is Grover from Sesame Street in the character of Super Grover. And he is not just my favorite superhero because our names both start with a G, but that he is the imperfect. So those of you that know anything about Super Grover, he crashes all the time and he falls down. But he always gets back up and tries again. And that's kind of how I see myself. Okay, next slide. I'm going to take a little sip. Sorry. So the world was a very different place when I was a little girl. there were way less opportunities for women in sport. So if you take a look up here, the year that the year that Nadia won the gold medal in the Olympics, women accounted for just 21% of athletes in the Montreal Summer Olympics, as compared to nearly 50% in the 2020 Tokyo Games. Moving into the world of business, in 1976, there was just one female CEO of a Fortune 500 company, making up 0.02%. In January of 2023, for the first time ever in history, that number surpassed 10% with 53 female CEOs. And Norwich is the birthplace of the NROTC. The ROTC. Let's look at some statistics in the military. 1973, that's when I was able to draw the most accurate numbers post-draft. Women accounted for just 2% of enlisted forces and 8% of the officer corps. Today, those numbers stand at 16% and 19%, respectively. So you see we've come a long way. We've got a long way to go. Next slide. Okay, a little bit of a sore spot for me over here. So at about the age of 7, I left the Flushing YMCA and moved over to a much more prestigious gymnastics academy. I wanted to go to the Olympics. My new idol was Mary Lou Retton, who graced the cover of the Wheaties boxes. She was the first American to score a perfect 10 in the Olympic Games. And I started at this new gymnastics academy, and I was the best one there. And then the other girls started coming in. And Sarah came, and she was the most graceful. And Nicole came, and she was the most polished in her dance movements. And Christy was the most flexible. And then Kim came, and she was the best. She was the most naturally gifted. She was fearless. She picked up skills quickly. She could pretty much do anything. And I wasn't the best anymore. I was incredibly jealous. And one day, I was just standing there, just staring at them, open mouth, breathing like I normally did, and hair a mess. And a coach walks over to me, not my coach, a coach from the older girls' team. He said to me, "What's wrong? You're just standing there, everybody around's doing routines. What's the matter?" I said, "I want to be the best. I want to go to the Olympics. Kim could do this, and Christy's doing this, and Nicole's doing this." He told me to stop looking at them and that I need to work hard, that natural talent is only going to go so far. He taught me that I could control two things. I could control my attitude, which was poor, and I could control the effort that I put in. I need to stop looking around me, stop being jealous and envious, and put that work into the things that I could control. And that is exactly what we did. I did. Interestingly enough, Kim, who was the best girl on the team, became my training partner. And I didn't really like that because that meant that if I worked hard, she was probably working hard and getting better too. So the end of the year comes and there's an awards ceremony, and I was really working towards the MVP. I wanted to be the MVP of the team, but I didn't get the MVP. I got the hardest worker trophy, and I wanted to take that hardest worker trophy and throw it through a window. See, my attitude wasn't fixed at the moment. And for the next 4 years, 86, 87, 88, 89, that's 4 more years, I collected the hardest worker trophy, never collecting the MVP. But I patterned good behaviors, and I never stopped working. I never took another first place in gymnastics, except the one time that Kim got sick and didn't show up at the competition. I knew that if I kept working and put in the effort, that someday my time would come. Next slide. Okay. So I was somewhat of a strange kid. I spent a lot of time observing people around me, just observing human behavior. And I noticed that people took great joy from physical activity. The time of day at school where there was the most laughter was on the playground. I also noticed that people that did not take care of themselves physically at some point became trapped in their bodies. I thought to myself, you only get one body. True, you only get one mind, but that mind is housed in the body. And this is a very unfortunate thing that happens. We could continue to build this for most of our lives, for most of us. We're always learning. We could go get degrees when we're 75, but our physical bodies start going in the other direction at some point. We need to do something about this. The other thing that I took note of was the disproportionate amount of time spent in school on things that were just up here. How many subjects do we go to in a day that only work up here? We're not spending enough time learning to take care of this. So I said, this is what I want to do for a living. I want to put people in the driver's seat. I want to teach people to be the captain of their ship. And thus launched my illustrious personal training career. My first client, because that's what we call it in the industry, was a friend named Marty, a girl that my parents used to babysit for after school. And most days, we just did homework together. But people were starting to tease her a little bit about her weight, and she asked me to help her. So I said, sure. So we walked to the back of the house and went to my bedroom, which had some gymnastics equipment, and I told her, jump on the trampoline. Not a full-size trampoline, we weren't rich, little mini trampoline. So she starts jumping on the trampoline, and I walk out of the room, go to the kitchen, make myself a big bowl of nachos, pour tortilla chips in a bowl, heat up the cheese whiz, pour it over, walk back into the room, and sure enough, Marty had stopped jumping. So I yell at her to jump, keep jumping. You want to lose weight, keep jumping. So I sat down on my bed and ate my nachos while Marty jumped on the trampoline. Let's just say that Marty never came back for another training session. So there was some learning from that. And a couple years later, there was some in-betweens, mostly with my sister. It was tough on her. A couple years later, in 7th grade, I got another opportunity with a friend, Vanessa. And we trained together for a period of a couple weeks, and I thought it was going fantastic. I did it with her, I motivated her, I corrected form, I didn't dangle junk food in her face. And her mom called my mom one afternoon and said, Vanessa is not allowed to come over anymore. And my mother's like, what happened? And Vanessa's mother said, Vanessa is too sore to do her chores after she leaves your house. So that was the end with Vanessa. But I kept practicing, and I hope that I got better. Next slide. Okay. So let me set the tone for this. I started junior high school in 1989 in a public school in Queens. Some of you went to middle school, so junior high school is traditionally 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And when I started junior high, there was a free program in the mornings that was optional. The girls did aerobics, and the boys did weight training. And I wanted to go and do something and participate. I was one of those kids that got to school the second they opened the doors. And I did aerobics for a few days, but I found myself staring at the boys doing weight training. I wanted to do that. I also kept staring at something else. It was a wall of fame, which was a wall of records. Physical education records that were tested. Things like a rope climb for time, push-ups, sit-ups, a mile run, dips, bench press. And they were listed, some of them had nothing under the girls. They were listed in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, boys and girls. And there were places where there was girls' records that were just blank because girls didn't do that. So anyhow, I walked over to Mr. Hammer, who was a PE teacher in charge of the weight training program, and I said, Mr. Hammer, can I join the weight training club? And he said, no. Girls do aerobics, boys do weight training. So I wasn't going to take no for an answer. And I said to Mr. Hammer, if I break the records of the 9th grade boys as a 7th grade girl, will you let me join the club? So here I am, I'm 12. Those records may have been set by 15-year-old boys. And he chuckles and says, sure. He asks me where I want to start. I choose pull-ups. Sure enough, I get up there and break the record of the 9th grade boys. What Mr. Hammer didn't know was that I already had 10 years of gymnastics experience. You don't always know everything about everybody. And then after that, I asked to do the push-ups, and I broke that record too. And Mr. Hammer honored his word and allowed me into the weight training club. And what's the first thing I do? I went home, and I called a friend and asked her to come with me. So the two of us show up on the first day. But not only was Mr. Hammer such an exceptional leader that he was willing to be open-minded, he additionally opened a door. He looked into co-ed physical fitness programs and competitions that our school could be part of and started a program and a team. And it took off so much that when my sister followed into the school 3 years later, she joined the team. So my obsession, and some people think of that as a negative word, my obsession with physical fitness continued on into high school. Like I said, I was a very strange child. After homework, after practice, I would lock myself in my bedroom each and every night and work out. I didn't know what I was doing, so I did everything. I had Arnold Schwarzenegger's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding under my bed, and I pulled it out. I did every exercise that I could think of in there, and then I did all my gymnastics exercises. I listened to 3 soundtracks on cassette every night: Rocky IV, Flashdance, and Footloose, and did my exercises. So I started putting on some muscle. I started getting very strong. This carried on into high school. My first 2 years in high school was primarily still very serious about gymnastics, but I sustained a serious injury that took me out of it and ended up finding my home on the track team. But I was still super passionate about fitness. The track team wasn't as fun. Certainly the cross-country team wasn't as fun as gymnastics. So I went to my cross-country coach, Mr. Featherston, and said, "Can we start a fitness club?" He didn't really know what I was talking about, but I managed to put him in touch with Mr. Hammer from junior high school to start that club. And our first fitness club was really the girls' track team. And we started doing weight training, and I started taking the other girls through some exercises. And guess what? We became better runners. And everybody really enjoyed it. And we started going to competitions. We participated in the United States Marine Corps National Physical Fitness Program, which they test you in 5 events. It is push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, a 300-yard shuttle run, and standing broad jump. And we started going to competitions. And I don't know how we made it there, but we made it to the national championship our first year, which was my junior year. And we get out there. And I thought I was going to win. I always think I'm going to win. And event number 3, I do great in the first 2 events, in the push-ups and the sit-ups. Event number 3 is the pull-ups. Like, this is all me. My first 28 pull-ups did not count. No rep, no rep, no rep. Finally, on number 29, I got one. And I was very angry at Master Sergeant Jones, who is my judge. Turns out that I had too much body movement, and I was swinging too much. All in all, I placed 13th in the country, but I set my sights on the following year. And I knew if I wanted a different result, that I had to change something. I had to go back to the lessons of my grandmother and be honorable in my movement. So the fitness team really started to grow and take off in senior year, expanded outside of the track program. And it was because the fitness team, if they qualified for nationals, got to go to San Diego, to sunny California for a week and miss school. So we started to get quite a bit more athletes coming from other places on the team. So to raise money to send us, I worked very hard all year to raise money to send us to the national championship. There was an idea that we would sell candy. Most of you have sold candy at some point or sold something to raise money for your school. So Mr. Featherston handed us 2 cases of M&Ms each, maybe 30 boxes in each case. That's what we were supposed to start with. When we finished selling that, we were supposed to come back for more. Should the time comes to turn in your money, and I didn't have any. And Mr. Featherston said, just give me back the M&Ms. And I said, I can't. And he's like, what happened? I said, I ate them. He's like, you ate them, all of them. Yes, I ate all of them. I ate 2 cases of M&Ms. So I was always scheming, and I had to think of a way that I was going to come up with this money. So I suggested a fundraising push-up-a-thon. Why don't we get people to sponsor us? 5 cents, a penny, $1 a push-up. We'll do it in the auditorium, we'll get on stage, and we'll do push-ups. And that's what we did. Again, what people didn't realize was how many thousands and thousands of push-ups got done in my bedroom while listening to those 3 soundtracks. And the day came, we got on stage, we went in groups of maybe 10, and I got down and did 400 consecutive perfect push-ups. And the person that had the next highest number, some of you are looking at me funny, the person that had the next highest number was 160. It was the top male competitor in this school. So I became a little bit of a legend after that. But that ended up getting used as a weapon. So here's an example of leadership when it goes poorly. So people recognized that I had this physical skill. And some of the coaches of the male sports teams asked me to come out and show up the boys, outlift them, outrun them, outperform them at their practices. That it was shameful to them and created an enormous amount of animosity. We're going to pick back up on that story a little bit later. So the rest of that year, I continue to train super hard to go to the national championship. The team is doing awesome, and I get out to California, and I won. I became the United States Marine Corps National Physical Fitness Champion with the highest score in history. And and I went back to the school, and it was amazing. I was invited by then-Mayor Rudy Giuliani to Gracie Mansion to be honored. The principal threw a reception. There were banners at the schools. And it was the best of times. And it was also the worst of times. I ran into a tremendous amount of adversity. Some of it caused by those coaches that had made some mistakes. People did not know what to make of me, so they made fun of me. And the people that were afraid of me picked on the people around me. I was called horrible names like She-Man, Wildebeest, Cyborg. Many of the things that I was called, I will not say in this room. And a couple of weeks after I got back, this article ran in the newspaper congratulating me, and I circled that first line. Jillian Muncie is different than most other kids at her school. Hidden beneath her baggy army shirt are biceps bigger than most of the boys. And I was mortified. I was very self-conscious about my body. People were making comments all the time, people were touching me, and I hid it. I asked my mom to go around and buy up the newspapers, not so that I could share them with my family and friends, but so that nobody else could see them. Luckily, this was before the internet age. So they were tough times. And I'm going to share something, and I hope that I am not going to get emotional. When I was putting this presentation together, I thought about something that I had not shared and I had repressed for nearly 30 years. I was going to be late for math class one day for calculus because we were doing physical fitness testing in the gym class, and we were getting an opportunity to break the records. So I had a note that was allowing me to be late for math. And I went up to my math class, after PE about 7 minutes late. And the room was roaring in laughter. And as soon as I crossed through the doorway of the room, the whole room silenced. My high school boyfriend was sitting in that room. I looked over at him. He was bright red, his fists were clenched, and he had tears streaming down his face. And I looked over at the teacher, who was white as a ghost. The teacher had drawn a depiction of me on the board, this girl with big hair and huge muscles dragging my boyfriend behind me. And I just sat down and took my seat. I don't have words to express how that made me feel, because truthfully, it's not something I've even addressed since that time. I never told anybody. I never told my parents. The only people that knew were the people sitting in this room. So, the people, sitting in that room and now sitting in this room. So people ask me, Jillian, why didn't you stop? You had it really tough. I had it really tough. And I'm always nice about things and never really say how bad that it is, but it was tough. I didn't stop because my love and passion were stronger than their hate. Next slide. So I'm going to fast forward now more than 20 years. So I'm leaving you off at 17 years of age, and I'm going to pick back up at 39. So during this time, I spent honing my skills in the fitness profession and as a professional athlete. And I think I started to get an itch at the age of 39. Like, I don't have a lot of time left. I need to do something. Not that I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of time to do athletic things. And I decided I want to set the world record for push-ups. But really, who cares about a 39-year-old lady doing push-ups? What am I known for? I am known for freaky athletic feats of strength and endurance. And what if I could connect something that I'm really good at with something that's going to make a difference in this world? What am I passionate about? I'm passionate about childhood physical fitness and physical education initiatives, providing programs for people to be able to start young. And I was in an underserved community. Not every student had PE. We had a series of hurricanes that washed out eastern North Carolina. A lot of the school gymnasiums were damaged, and there were no programs. And it's always the kids that need it the most that get it the least. You've got these kids that have money, and they're in athletics, and they're in sport, and they get all of that stuff. And then there's the kids that never get anything. I said, what if I could raise money, I could do push-ups and raise money and awareness for physical education initiatives in eastern North Carolina? That's what I want to do. And I partnered with the Carteret County Public School Foundation. But I thought, raising money is not enough. You can't just throw money at something. I want to get in there and I want to teach these kids. So thus the idea for Pushing for PE was born. So for 6 months, I set out on a plan that I was going to train in the mornings, very early. During the day, I was going to make school visits at the elementary school and junior high school level. I was going to hit my county first and then the surrounding counties. And the lessons would be about physical fitness, nutrition, health, and they were just going to be fun and not intimidating. And in the evening, I was going to raise money. None of this GoFundMe stuff, like get really uncomfortable and go into audiences that don't know who you are and ask them for money. Could I come to, it could be anything. It could have been the knitting club or the Rotary Club or a veterans club, and I would get in front of anybody that I could and ask people to contribute to the cause. And very often, I ended up doing push-ups right there because I could use my talents. They're like, you give me $100 if I do 100 push-ups? Sure. And sometimes that is what it became. I spent most of that summer getting my curriculum approved, which was not the easiest thing to do. So one of the lessons that I wanted to teach was about breathing and posture, something my grandmother taught me about standing up straight and sitting straight. And I was told, Jillian, you can't teach that. We can't teach conformity. And another lesson, I wanted to have a push-up contest. I didn't really realize at the time that I wasn't supposed to do that, but I learned very quickly. But we did some kind of challenge. I was very fortunate to have 2 training partners during this time as I tried to break the world record for push-ups that were unexpected. One of them was an intern, and one of them was a girl that coached at my gym that I never realized. It brought us together as a bond. I also ran into some pretty big challenges during that time. I lost 2 women during those months. There's always obstacles that get in the way. I lost my great Aunt Millie, who was my grandmother Shirley's best friend, and I lost my previous mother-in-law. But I pushed forward. So the event was set for October 22nd of 2016. I had 6 long months. What a lot of people don't know was I attempted to break 2 records that day, not just the world record for push-ups in an hour that stood at 1,020, but I was also trying to break the world record for pull-ups, because of course I thought I could do that too. So the event begins, and it was live streamed on Facebook. It was streamed in the schools. There was about 300 people live in attendance. And I failed on the pull-ups. The record for consecutive strict pull-ups in 1 minute was 38, and I did 37. Here I go out of the gate, completely fail. Everybody is watching me. All these little kids are here watching me, and I missed the mark. I had 30 minutes to put that, keep getting hung up on those pull-ups. So I had 30 minutes to put that behind me and start with the push-ups. And I surrounded myself with people that I really trusted. My best friends and family served as the counters. And I succeeded. The record was 1,020, and I did 1,190 push-ups in 1 hour. Although it almost got ended, my mother started getting nervous. I started to kind of break down a little bit in the 900s, and my mother could recognize my facial expressions when I'm in trouble, and I started really shaking. And my father prevented her from throwing in the towel and stopping it. So I'm pretty fortunate about that. Say, Jillian, how did you do 1,190 push-ups? What went on in your head? Like, how did you wrap your mind around that? Because I always saw it as just one push-up at a time, one step at a time. I can always do just one, and then again, just one. It was about never getting ahead of myself and honoring each and every movement. I learned some lessons from that previous pull-up fail, and I only counted to the number 1. And it was the people around me that helped with the counting and logging and all of that. So I was pretty proud of that accomplishment. But the one thing that really stands out to me, and I raised a decent amount of money, and they even allowed me to allocate the funds to where I wanted based on the grant requests. But about 3 weeks after the event, when it was all in the past, I was walking around Walmart. I don't know what I was looking for. I don't remember. And I was in the sporting good aisle. And a father and son started walking towards me. And the little boy got down, and he started doing push-ups. And then his dad got down and started doing push-ups. I walked right over to them, and they stood up. It turns out that I went to that little boy's school at White Oak Elementary, and he loved doing push-ups, so much that he went home and he shared it with his family. And they had been doing the exercises together since I visited that school 3 months prior. And to me, that made it all worth it. When I think about the push-ups, I don't think about setting the world record. I think about touching that one child's life. Last slide. Okay, next one. Oops. Okay, so what is this all about today? All of the stories that I shared with you, with the exception of the last one, took place before I was the age of most of the people in this room. It is never too early to make a difference. You just need to start somewhere. Take the first step. The hardest step is the first step. My hardest push-up was that first push-up. It's gonna be messy, and you're gonna fail. When people think of me, they think of this list of accomplishments. Like Jillian wins everything. She wins this, she wins that, she comes in first place. And sure, I have a list like that, and it's the one you probably read about when you read about the speakers. But I have a list of failures this long. So I became a pro bodybuilder in 2014 by winning the International Federation of Bodybuilding North American Championships. One out of a field of 1,300, pretty big deal. Guess what? I decided to do my first pro show. Didn't realize the difference between the amateur and pro level. And I came in dead last. Nothing even happened to me. Like, I didn't get injured. I just came in last. And I earned and deserved to be in last place. One of the accomplishments other than the push-ups that I am most known for is in the 2008 CrossFit Games. After 3 months of CrossFitting, I took third place. I was the favorite going into the 2009 Games. I had media, the CrossFit Journal, follow me for a year, recording everything that I did. I got to the 2009 Games, and I bombed. I was eliminated on day one of competition and placed in the bottom third. But that's not what people remember. So yes, you're going to fail. It's going to be messy. But just like Grover, Super Grover, you're going to get back up again. And the other thing is to recognize your impact. Ralph, that gymnastics coach that came over and taught me about effort, he wouldn't know me in the street. I never got to thank him. He wasn't even my coach. He just saw a little girl that was struggling and came over and took the time. So take the time. All of your interactions matter. Maybe you are going to be the change maker. Or maybe you are going to be that leader that takes the time with someone and inspires them, and they go out and change the world. Thank you. I'm done. Sorry. I'm going to open it up to questions, so I'll take them up here, and then if we finish, then I will be around if anybody wants to stick around. Any questions? Good morning, ma'am. Good morning.
So, if you don't mind me asking, what is next for you? What do you set your sights on next?
Retirement, not my retirement. We are retiring soon, and we are moving back to North Carolina. And I am setting my sights, as always, on having to recreate. Part of being somewhat of a military spouse is every time that I move, I start over again. And this time we are both starting over together. And I'm going to be honest, starting over in Vermont was the hardest thing I have ever done. And some of it was because I was older, and it just gets harder as you're older. And some of it was COVID. And the thing that makes it for me, I'm going to be honest, and I mean this, was being asked to be here today. Because for 3 years in Vermont, I had a very tough time breaking in, and I've done most of my work online. I'm an online nutritionist and coach, and I have not had the interaction with the community that I wanted. So when I was asked to speak here today, I was blown away. Because it was the first time I realized that the little bit of work that I have done here with the cheerleaders and some of the NROT students had been noticed. But I'd say starting over again, again. Did I answer the question or totally go around it? Any other questions?
Hey, Jillian.
Hey.
So I actually kind of have a selfish question.
Sure. How to get a bigger bench press. Go ahead.
I'm the father of 2 little girls, and so when you tell me stories of like encountering that type of behavior, that'll really like, if my girls encounter that, I know I'll be pretty triggered by it, and I'll want to do something about it. But what advice can I give to them for like the concrete thought processes that you had to go through? You are a really positive person, and you're very charismatic, and people are drawn to you. So you've obviously overcome that through a series of thought processes where you're overcoming that bullying, for lack of a better word. So could you maybe speak a little more specifically on that, or do you need me to rephrase?
No, I think it comes back to what my grandmother taught me. Don't stoop to their level. Be the person of character and lead by setting the example. 2 wrongs, that other wrong is not going to make a right. It is difficult as a parent. And I'm going to be just honest because in terms of your answer, knowing how difficult it was going to be, I hid some of this from my parents. If there is a video, my parents will hear that story for the first time. But I mean, we ultimately know that our children are going to have to learn to probably be able to handle it. It was also a very different time, and I did not have the challenges of today. I had my own challenges, like reading about my muscles in a newspaper, but I didn't deal with social media and a lot of what goes on today. Did I answer it? Okay. Anything else? Do you want to ask me your question?
Absolutely,
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
Yes, doctor. I sort of work for you, so it's okay.
But, you know, not only am I thankful for Queen, I think I worked at that flushing gym as well, but you know, uneven bars, the first session. But I've seen you work with young people and where our students here, our cadets, are trying to get to that next stage, and we know physically. And it's so tempting to, for lack of a better term, cut corners, right? Whether it is dealing with their nutrition, whatever is on a GNC shelf, you know, and follow her on Instagram, by the way. It's the most amazing thing in the morning. It's inspiring. But, you know, what kind of advice can you give them right now about, you know, how do you take charge of yourself?
Yep.
There is no cutting corners. And by the way, she's worked with my son 4 sessions and made just those 4 sessions completely change his life, and he's your age. So can you give the 30 seconds,
Yes.
1-minute version of that for me to tell them?
So there is no cutting corners. And what I equate that to is sometimes when we build a house, you want a house with the strongest foundation made with the best materials. You don't want the cheapest, fastest thing that goes up. So I would likely, when speaking to somebody, use an analogy that I could relate to. If you build it fast and wrong and shiny, it's going to break. And things take time. More than anything else, things take time. All of my success has come to consistency over time. A lot of times people will come up to me. Some people like the way I look. Some people hate the way I look. And they're like, I want to have muscles and I want to be toned, but like not like you. Like not to that extent. That's too much. Like, do you have any idea how long I have been working on this? I've been training for over 40 years. It all takes time. And to be patient. There is no rush to get there. Because once you've got there, then what? It really is all about the journey.
So we've talked thousands of hours since we got here in Vermont, and
About this presentation, too?
about this presentation in the last 3 months, exactly. But you've talked about your passion and your love for what you do being greater than anyone's hate, and it might lead someone to think that you are fearless. But I know specifically that you do have a fear, and I'd like you to see if you would address it with the crowd.
I have one great fear, and that is fear of quitting. feel like if you quit once, it makes it easier to quit again. And I learned that when I was in 5th grade. I was working on a very challenging gymnastics skill, and I was afraid of it. I had recently seen a friend of mine get seriously injured, and I was doing a tumbling pass on the balance beam, and I kept throwing it off the beam to avoid trying to land it. And then after a while, I just stood there and stopped trying at all. I just stood there, and I was wasting the coach's time. She said, "If you're not going to do it, you can leave. You could sit outside and wait for your mom because you are wasting my time." I didn't always have the best coaches that handled things in the best way. But at being 11 years old, I went and I sat outside, and I remember how cold the concrete sidewalk was, and I wrapped my jacket around my knees and sat in a little ball and felt very cold, but mostly I thought about how bad it felt to quit, and that I didn't want to do that again. So I am most afraid of quitting. So you know what I say? I will try.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Please, another round of applause for Miss Jillian Ward.
Thank you. I didn't even use my notes. Thank you. Okay, let me now fall down.
Okay, so we will not have any break. I will give very short closing remarks. Then we will be done with our first ever leadership conference. I just want to thank again Dean Conway and Jillian for their teamwork and for her great talk. It really touched my heart. And Jillian, you are a great leader. You're a change maker. And from my personal experience, you're a great individual and person, which matters a lot. So thank you again. As the Leadership Center Director and the Leadership Program Chair, I would like to thank all of you, all our faculty, our students, alumni, and all our participants for attending Norwich's first leadership conference. I want to thank you, all our keynotes, speakers, presenters, panelists. Without them, we wouldn't have great conference. So thank you for all of them. I appreciate that you join us as we share our experiences, learn more about cutting-edge research in our field, and grow as educators of future leaders. I also want to thank our conference planning team for their dedicated work, Megan, Rennie, Ariella. We did it. And I want to thank President Anaruma for his support. It really means a lot to me. Okay, saying goodbye is very difficult. And I want to thank our provost and her office and our marketing office for their support. And we work with all our Norwich people here, with our family. You haven't seen most of them because they are working behind the scenes, so I also appreciate their hard work. Thank you. Leadership is more than just a title or a position. It's a mindset and a set of values that drive individuals to make a difference. To succeed in leadership, we need to be innovative and teach future leaders, our students or our team members, to think innovatively. And my innovative students define leadership by using metaphors, such as gardening, cooking, or cheerleading. I consider leadership to be similar to parenting, and the only difference is that leaders have to deal with more tantrums, and they are not allowed to use timeouts. As professionals and academics in the field of leadership, we are tasked with improving decision-making skills through the coursework we assign and the lectures we share with our students. And it is our responsibility to develop critical thinkers for the future. In our commitment to our students, fellow faculty members, and communities, we encourage better thinking and develop more innovative ideas for the future. Our conference, therefore, offered many opportunities for collaboration and community building in the last 2 days. Thank you again to our faculty, students, and conference participants for seizing these moments to share about the transformations happening in their leadership programs, their teams, and working environments. Having moved here from Turkey 6 years ago, Vermont, like Jillian, it was a tough transformation. It has been challenging for me. And after 6 years, I can say with confidence that my transformation is complete. I am now able to discuss and convince other people that creamies are superior to ice cream. Creamies are Vermont's legacy. In terms of leadership, what is our legacy? We can create a legacy by encouraging our students and colleagues to develop transferable skills. We can instill in them the ability to adapt to whatever the future holds, while our students, future leaders, will likely work in careers not yet developed and teach them infinitive skills that will last a lifetime, no matter where their lives take them. In today's rapidly changing world, effective leadership is more critical than ever. Whether you are leading a team, an organization, or a community, remember that your actions have a ripple effect that can transform the world. We had an excellent chance to share experiences and examine critical changes happening around us in the last 2 days, because championing change and transformation is our responsibility. See you next year to shape the future. Thank you.